Hi, I'm Jack Buffington for RobotBrigade.com. This is another video in my series of videos about a mapping robot that I'm working on. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the bill of materials, or generally, how much is this going to cost you? Let's jump into the mechanical portion right now. So here I have a spreadsheet of all the parts. And this spreadsheet can be found right here, or you can go to robotbrigade.com/mappingrobot.php. And if that's, I think there's some capitalization in there. So maybe robotbrigade.com and then go into tutorials and you can find this, a link to this page. So in here I have quantity, description, vendor, how much each one costs, the total for the robot, and then a link to each product. For the things that are from Amazon, I have an Amazon associate account that should you buy these, I will get a small percentage of the purchase price, and I'm obligated to tell you that that is happening. For these parts right here, they are 3D printed or machined. In this case, these are the motor mounts. I used machined aluminum ones. I've suggested that maybe you could 3D print them, but I have found subsequently an alternate from, I want to call this Pololu, but apparently the pronunciation is Pulau. Anyway, I have found these stamped ones that should work as well. So if you're looking down here at this total price and thinking, oh my gosh, because you're used to the small Arduino robot kits that in some ways are quite similar, yes, I agree with your sentiment, but just this got to be rather expensive due to the fact that it's a one-off, and the acrylic's kind of expensive. Anyway, yeah, it is what it is. But this allows you to hold an RP LiDAR, a big battery. It has room for a low-level microcontroller board as well as a high-level Raspberry Pi or whatever you want to be all there on the robot at once. And so that necessitates that it's bigger and a little beefier. Let's go over to the circuit board. So for the controller circuit board, I have basically the same stuff. How many, actually not how many, I list, if I have multiple of the same part, I have it in here multiple times. The cost and what it, where you can get it, which is usually DigiKey. I have a circuit board in here that I gotta say, the world of circuit boards is radically different than when I started about 25 years ago. You can get them so cheap now and so fast, and they're great quality, and you're not stuck with proprietary software. So I'm pretty sure I used PCBWay, and this is how much you would pay for this board if you did order from them. Some things, just due to the nature of this being a one-off, like this solder paste here, you just have to buy it, but that could do for probably 20 boards. Other electronics, this is where the pain really starts. That RP LiDAR, it's not cheap. There are other alternatives, such as if you used a Garmin LiDAR light, that's a single point structured light, or no, it is a LiDAR, it's a true LiDAR. If you put that on a rotary mount on a motor, or maybe you have it aimed straight up and you have a rotary mirror aimed by a stepper motor, that could do the same thing at a much lower cost. The expense is then your time to design that mechanism. My next revision after I get done playing around with LiDAR is going to be with a camera with a super wide angle lens aimed straight up. That would also be much cheaper. But it really depends on what you want to do with this robot. For me right now, I want to play with LiDAR, and so that's why I have that. You know, the Raspberry Pi is the next biggest expense. And it is what it is. I was originally thinking I want to try to do this with a Raspberry Pi Zero W, but when I realized it only had 512 megs of RAM, I was a little worried about it being sufficient. Now, I may get to the end of this project and find that that would be totally sufficient, in which case I will probably go that route. I'll, you know, show that off. We've got another expensive one here. I've spec'd out the official Dewalt battery. There are other cheaper batteries out there, but if I'm going to spec something, I'm going to spec something that is going to be of a known quality. So it is more expensive. There are cheaper ones. I think you can get them for 25 or 30 bucks for a 2 amp hour battery. And then the interesting thing is that I've also seen up to 8 amp hours for not that much money. And I may at some point actually raise the LiDAR, not the LiDAR light, the RP LiDAR up onto using higher standoffs and stick a bigger battery in there to get longer runtime. But all total, yeah, this whole thing's about 800 bucks. And that can be a pretty bitter pill to swallow if you're in high school or in college and looking to build a little robot. You know, for somebody who's a professional and already has a career, it's on the borderline of spousal disapproval, but it is possible. And of course, if you're in college and you've got funding, then this is no big deal at all. This sort of sits in the middle ground between those Arduino robots and the full-on giant clunky research robots that you see in a lot of colleges. So if you are looking to do a college project on the cheap, this might be your platform. I have one more tab here at the bottom, and that's where to find things. This just is not really bill of materials, but since I had a spreadsheet already, I figured I might as well stick it in here. I have all my code on GitHub, and my online CAD model is on Onshape, which if you haven't seen that video, Onshape is a free, if you keep everything open source, CAD package. And I've used it professionally as well as for things like this, and I'm pretty happy with it. I understand it's not so good at 2D drawings, but I don't typically do those, so not a problem for me. Then finally, the project webpage is right here. The capitalization matters on my server, so the R would have to be capitalized for mapping robot. Of course, these are all clickable, I think. Yeah, there we go. So that does it for the mapping robot and the bill of materials. Hopefully I haven't scared you off with the cost of this thing. Real robots are not cheap, unfortunately. They just are what they are. But for robotbrigade.com, I'm Jack Buffington.